Welcome, welcome to Living Legacy Life Alive. It's great to have you here with us, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch, whether it's now and or watching the recording. You'll still find value even after the fact. So with that, I want to just highlight where we're going. But before I dive into that, I just want to remind you that this is raw. And what I'm asking you to think about is, are you ready, able, and willing? It's raw, but in its formatting as well, there's a bit of rawness to what's going on. So you may not see me always talking to the camera. My head may go down as I'm playing with the technology in support of this. I just want to acknowledge that to start with. So where we're going today is a quick update on a couple of things that are happening under younger, older, elder. Then I want to look at this concept of legacy life framework, and I put a question mark there, and there's a reason for that. And then looking at these 13 action outcomes that are ways that get you started and thinking about what does it mean to craft a lasting legacy, so that I might be able to introduce it to family and friends. How might I start the steps? What actions would be helpful along those steps? So I just wanted to bring that to the foreground. And part of this was due to some questions that I've received and a book I'm writing. And so I wrote a beginning draft chapter of a book, and I published it on LinkedIn. And I thought, hang on a minute, wouldn't that make a great workshop on a Saturday? And thus we're here. And then I have a couple of asks of you at the end, and answer any questions that you might have. But I'll be monitoring if there's questions that are coming along, so that I can sort of see what's possible as this unfolds. Now, I just like to acknowledge that the picture you see here, that's me in the yellow helmet. That was the last working rafting trip that I did down the Kananaskis River here in Alberta. It was a team development workshop that I had created, and I had been a whitewater rafting guide for about 22 summers, but this summer was the last summer that I actually was a guide and supporting it. So the summer prior to that, I'd actually given up my certification, but I was a guide in the raft in support of this team development because a group had asked me, and this was the very last time that I served. And I was 55 at the time. So those of you who are in your 50s and 60s thinking about, oh, where am I with what's going on? I just shared with you this photograph so that you can go, hang on a minute, there's still a lot that I can do, a lot that I can think about. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that and bring that to the foreground, but also just to remind you that if you do have any questions, please put them into the chat box. I will check that every once in a while to see what's possible for us. And where I'm going to go today is around this topic. And it's create a legacy framework that lasts with these proven strategies. Now, if you remember, I put framework in question mark, which is why I wanted to do just a quick YOE update linked to this. From a younger, older, elder point of view, I've come to understand that what really becomes important is how to assist you in crafting that lasting legacy, that meaningful legacy. I have been attempting to look at it through a couple of other lenses, but I think what is of greatest assistance based on my research, asking questions of you, and you can let me know in the comments section, you're looking to figure out, if I'm going to create a lasting legacy, how do I do it? And there's lots of how-to questions that go along with that. And you are looking for a little bit more dig in there, give us something to work with, rather than attempting to go and watch a whole bunch of videos and get some piecemeal and then I have to put it together versus, oh, Stephen, can you help us? And thus we are here. So the update is 2025 very much is there's a lot of how-tos that are going to be coming out in support of your questions that you have of that. The other thing I would just acknowledge is that the books are moving along. First one is probably going to be ready in a couple of weeks. It's more of a how-to, like a planner, and it's looking at legacy awareness and the notion of a mapping planner so that you have something to really work with, put on your desk and interact with, or on screen, depending on which way you want to go. So let's go back into where we're going with this, which is create a legacy framework. And I want to acknowledge that word, framework, and to bring that to the foreground. But it's to look at that lasting legacy, a framework to create a lasting legacy. And what are some proven strategies and tactics that one can use? And therefore, I think it's important to just remind ourselves of frameworks and steps, maps, diagrams, and actions. They're connected, but sometimes they sit in sort of a different space and time. And I would offer this. From a framework point of view, it's more of, yes, here's the models like you see below, that you see here, and there's steps that you're going to take. You're going to move through these steps as you see what's going to take place. And as a bit of a, it's linear, okay? What becomes interesting is that maps, okay, when you look at this one, maps are, there's diagrams and actions that you can take. So for example, they went from home to the shopping cart to the grocery store, but they could have gone a couple of ways to get there. For example, they could have gone that way. They could have had fun and go around and back. There's different ways that you can get there. And there's times where maps are really helpful to allow you a little bit of non-linear approach versus following the framework models and steps with a linear approach. So I want to bring that to the foreground because while I'm attempting to help you understand, all right, this is great. I want to create a legacy framework, that linear, okay, how do I do this? It's based on proven strategies that are linked to the sense of the action outcomes that I want to give to you. So I want to acknowledge that these interact with one another. So there are times when the framework is going to be helped by the action outcomes, the maps, and the maps action outcomes are going to help the framework steps, and you're going to be sort of chasing each other. So over time, I'll be bringing out more about these connections, and I will be looking at this notion of maps, diagrams in another workshop. Next week, probably we'll be looking at what's called CAMS, Content Asset Management System from a safety point of view, because someone asked if I would do it and go over it with them. And I said, can we do that as a workshop on a Saturday? And they said, sure. So I have a guest with us next week taking a look at this CAMS, which is more of a framework and sort of models and steps that you would go through to create your maps, diagrams, and actions. So we'll actually go through a specific framework. But today what I wanted to do is I wanted to acknowledge what are some action outcomes that you can come to understand in what it is that you do. So I have 13 of them that I'm going to go over briefly. I have 5 where I'm weaving the other 13 together. And then I have a couple of points that I would like to make before we look at closing off. And those points are going to be really important. So I would encourage you to stay to the end to see what they are, because they are really foundational elements for you as you have your framework and then have your maps to move forward in crafting or discover, shape, and share your legacy contributions, stories, and project. So with that, I'm going to start with the first one here, which is evolve generosity. Legacy is about the useful whats that you gift others so that they can learn from your experiences. And the useful whats are time, effort, and money. So the gifts that you're sharing in your legacy contributions projects is this sharing of your time, effort, and money. That's where the generosity comes from. And are you willing to do that? Which goes back to that raw statement. Are you ready, able, and willing to share, to evolve that generosity? And that's why having a legacy framework, your legacy maps becomes so important. And one of the core elements here is caring, kindness. And I bring that to the foreground because there is what's called careless and careful. And careful is when I take care of someone else at my expense. Careless is when I take care of myself at someone else's expense. So instead of having those two extremes, can we find something about caring where we're interacting and helping each other? And therefore, I'm doing that from a generosity point of view, and I want to evolve that. And that's something that I do every day, even through this channel, is sharing the generosity of my insights. And yes, there are offers that are made. I get that. But there's a sense of, my heart, my wholeheartedness that I'm putting into this, and being able to say to you, here's something that I might be able to offer you, and I'm doing it from a caring point of view. It's reciprocal, it's wholehearted, it's holistic. That's what I'm attempting to do here. And to do it in such a way as that you as an individual and or you may be already interacting with a group or a community, and or you may say, well, my project is something that's local, but maybe my project is something that is international. And therefore, can I interact with you, Stephen, to get stuff? Yes. And that's why we each can help out. And that's why I so appreciate comments down below, because that's your generosity to me that subscribe, those comments. They're so appreciated. And it gives me a sense of where we're going and what's available. So the first thing is think about evolve generosity. The next thing is to feel through. I'm putting this up here before think about, to actually feel through, to acknowledge the emotions that are going to be present. Sometimes a legacy project is born of something that wasn't so great in your life, and you're thinking about how might I improve focus or strengthen the correction of that. And therefore, there's some emotions that go with that. Sometimes it might be as a way in which to fulfill a project started by someone in the family and you want to continue, and therefore there is a bit of a tradition of family that's there. So often this sense of emotions will pop in and they will guide your decision making. They'll guide the transitions that you're going to go through. And it's very much about honoring about what's taking place, the judgment that you place there. Now, there are emotions like fear and curiosity and desire. Those are important ones to think about it. And often if fear is present, that fear is your belief that something in the future is going to cause you more pain than pleasure. Crafting a legacy project, crafting your framework and maps of legacy actually can take care of that fear, because it will meet the desires that you're setting forth for yourself, and also encourage this curiosity, this learning. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later here. So there's a lot of advantages about allowing yourself to feel through your legacy project about what's going on. And if you haven't had a chance yet to read into EQ, the emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence, I would encourage you to do so. If you're looking for some resources around that, let me know in the comments section, and I can certainly suggest places to take yourself. Because at the end of the day, what you're looking for is this lasting, meaningful legacy, letting your emotions help you get there, to assist you, but not necessarily your legacy project is driven by your emotions. You may want to just ease that back and just acknowledge them, bring them to the foreground, but do so in a wholehearted, loving way. The next one I wanted to cover is look for and identify tools. The notion of a pen as a tool, the technique of how you write with them, that's a different story. And I'm actually going to go over technique afterwards. There was a great story that was told about the astronauts in space. And I haven't been able to completely verify it. So I just kind of like it. It's sort of an amusing story. And the American astronauts, because of writing in space and non-gravity, said, can we design a tool to write with while we're up there? And so they came up with a very special kind of pen and the way that it wrote, and then it ended up on market. That's great. So a lot of advancements that we have in our life actually come about because of space exploration. But where I'm taking this is the Russians said, why don't you just use a pencil? And my point here is there's the simplicity of creating something when we already have something there. Now, I'm simplifying this greatly. But what I'm asking you to think about is what are the tools that you may already have? What tools would you identify to bring in to be able to look at this crafting of a lasting legacy? And a tool may be just what this video is about, these action outcomes and figuring out which one is I have, which one don't I have, what do I have to do to improve focus and strengthen each one of these. You could go about doing it from that perspective as well. And a friend of mine also always says is the correct tool reduces friction and advances progress. And I hadn't always thought about friction and tools. I know they're there. I get that. But from a legacy point of view, getting the tool that's correct reduces the friction that's there. And I sort of go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And so, for example, I'm creating this presentation on Canva. That's why you can see the screen here. I'm playing with it so I can do my draw functions. And it's a tool. And therefore, as I use this tool, what I can do is come up with techniques to be able to make that happen. And I just did a scrolling technique on the tool. And so developing techniques is important, and or do I, like a tool and technique, do I buy it? Do I build it? Do I borrow it? What might I do with that? So as you develop your methods and your strategies and tactics, you're creating the processes or techniques to be able to move through. And that is most helpful because as you, in a sense, gain your voice and your authenticity and your mastery and your position, and you use these tools and techniques to share that, then you are stepping very much into the mastery as part of it and really become a master of your living legacy, your lasting legacy. And the underlying aspect here is confidence. And what that's about is that self-assuredness that you get it and you're going, great, I can actually do this. I can use Canva. I can use different software programs. I can. And then, oh, I'm not sure I can do that one. Well, that's where you can go learn it and find out how to bring it into your tools and techniques that you want to interact with. The next one I want to go over is manage shift. And a lot of people will say, well, you got to deal with the change. I get that. But they sometimes use change, sometimes incorrectly as far as I'm concerned. Change is what happens to you. Transition or shift is what you do in response to that change. And therefore, how do you do that confidently, naturally, gracefully? Those become ways in which to transition, interact, respond to what's coming at you. And you can't respond thinking about, and you've heard this story many times, this metaphor, is if all you have is a nail and a hammer to be able to fasten things, it doesn't always work in every place. Sometimes you need a screw and a screwdriver. Sometimes you may need a bolt and a wrench. These are different aspects of dealing with situations as they arise. And isn't it true that a lot of times there's a hammer, a screwdriver, a wrench, they're all there in the toolkit ready to go, and you use each one somehow. So if you think about it from that point of view, bring those tools, techniques into managing shift and how you deal with it. And the other great thing about this shift, because shift happens, is that you learn that there's new opportunities there, because as you deal with the shift, do the pivots, the course corrections as you're moving along, even in living this legacy life and drafting this legacy, you will be making course corrections and pivots and shifts. It's just inevitable. It's just part of the story that's going to be there for you, because there is shifting circumstances and your ambitions, your desires. Remember, change, transition is your shift. As things are out here, social, cultural, technological, environmental, economic, political, those are happening. How are you responding to them? That's about managing the shift. Now, another aspect of this is to decide ethically. And ethics are what we share between us as we interact with one another. As we adventure together, there are certain ethics, trust, respect, accountability, words like that. They become important to us. And therefore, we've got to ground ourselves in those ethics so that what we do is our interactions, our relationships are not going to be one where you're putting dirt or some grit and you're having this, and there is some knocking of heads that can expand out and get into deeper and wider conflicts. Is how do you use these ethics even in crafting your legacy life, your legacy projects? How do you introduce what you want to do to your family and friends so that you don't have this? How do you maybe bring some of your work colleagues into something? You're at the tail end of your career and you want to do some mentoring. How might you interact with your colleagues, younger, and see what you can do? Yet do it ethically so that it doesn't feel like there's some kind of interaction that might cause some kind of conflict. But the beauty is that by doing it ethically, you are bringing forward the understanding of values, the ethical values, and you're getting to know the other person, because in reciprocity, in this wholeheartedness, they're sharing their ethical values with you. So it's a great way in which to enter into each day and let the mysteries of the day unfold for you. The next one I wanted to do is just take a look at listen for and from the background. Often our conversations are in the foreground. It's happening. But if you listen for and from the background, what may be happening in the background, because what the person may be presenting may not be the whole story. And what is some things that are going on in the background that you can tap into to get that deeper awareness of what is there? And this takes a bit of time. And I'm hoping is that If you are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you've developed this. If you haven't, this is a great time to do it, especially if you're going to ask others to get involved with your legacy project. So think through this from this listening. And before you respond, I would encourage you to look at the credibility pause. Sometimes just taking a second to pause in response actually can help what's taking place, because it will remind you of the empathy aspect of, okay, if I'm listening for and from, is there something that I need to share empathy? And maybe the response isn't immediate response. It might be finding out what else is going on and showing the empathy about what's possible here. And legacy, when you go to unfold it, there actually is a lot of empathy associated with that. And I think that would make for a great workshop another day. What you also want to do is maintain your connections. And this is to foster those lasting relationships. And like mentoring with the mentor and the mentee, you can have a quick mentoring arrangement and it's done. Sometimes they might call it flash mentoring. Sometimes they may say it's for a month. I just need to get something taken care of. Other times it can be years and actually turn into great friendships and to carry forward and have great conversations over time. And what we're doing here is you're thinking about, from a lasting legacy point of view, these connections, maintaining these connections. It also offers you this network that you can tap into, these communities that can be of interest and concepts and practices and significance, all right? Or there's a word I use, significant care. There we go. Significant caring. Remember that careful, careless, caring I mentioned earlier? That's possible here. So, excuse me, the legacy pursuits that you're doing, there will be connections, because while you're on your unique journey, there are the adventures together you're going to take with others who you invite to get involved. So think about maintaining connections and how you do that. The next thing that I would do is get you to think about how you engage in and with dialogue. Here's to your cup of coffee. Because there is a sense that you can get into debate and discussion. Dialogue is more important. Debate is sort of, I have my point of view. It's like a stake. I put it behind me. I'm tethered to it. I'm not giving up on it. Discussion is, I have some things I really want you to know. So that stake, while not tethered behind me anymore, is in my hands, and I might be wanting to beat you in a sense with it. And that's metaphorically, because in discussion is cuss is to strike out. Discussion, all right, is you're striking out, wanting to make your point. Dialogue is about meaning flowing through, and guess what? You don't have that stake. What you're doing is you're saying, let's have that collaborative conversations that allow us to move forward. And the more that you can develop that and use that, allows you to engage with and through, because you want to keep moving forward. You don't necessarily want to be taken backward. How do you keep moving forward? That's what legacy is about. And the more that you can use this dialogue, the better it will be for everyone concerned, because wiser, kinder comes to the foreground. And also clarity. There's clarity from consistency, is that you know where you're going. And guess what? New ideas come out, investigations, interpretations become available to you, and you expand your perspectives, because as you offer your point of view, you're then listening to the other person's point of view. That's helping you understand your perspectives and perceptions, and as you share, and therefore it's back forth. It's this collaborative nature to what's going on. So see what you can do to really develop that. The next thing is, and this is a really beautiful component, reflect in and on. So as you are walking forward, even with yourself and or with others, reflect in what's taking place, and then in a sense remove yourself and reflect on what you see happening, or afterwards reflect on what took place. So this reflection in and on, and this is where journaling can help. This is where writing notes can help you, keeping track of what's taking place. And often in a framework, right, that linear, there are times to slow down and reflect on what's taking place as you move on into the steps that you want to take. But sometimes if you're using your maps and actions, you may not do that reflection as much from an in point of view, but you certainly are doing it from an on point of view. You're looking and figuring out what's going on versus that framework. You tend to be reflecting in it when it's unfolding. So another way to look at it. But what this does is it helps you to strengthen your self-awareness and really take a look at where you are so that you can say, okay, I could improve that. I could focus on that. I could strengthen that. That's all very useful. So thinking about it from that perspective. Next thing is nurture generativity. Whoa, there we go. This notion of generative approach and being able to take a look at how am I generating the next component and working with and taking what I have, the best of what I have, generating a new approach. Regenerative tends to be around that environment. You might hear that term. This notion of forward thinking mindset and heart set that you might have and working with it to take a look at your own growth, but also because you're adventuring with others, their growth as well. So thinking about it from that point of view. And again, it's an underlying sense of this collaboration that you can be on. So I'm hoping that what's taking place here is that you're getting a sense of what is possible and to be able to take that forward. So just before I finish off with a couple of more here, I just like to say, hey, do you have any questions? Put them in the chat. I'm just going to go over and check, see if there's anything there. Nothing there at the moment. That's okay. And we can keep moving forward then. So the next thing that I would encourage you to do is, this is where we get into think critically, okay? And this is where you're going to check your assumptions about what you think is happening. And I would encourage you not to get into assumptions or deepen assumptions, is actually find out what's going on. Get into a deeper understanding and evaluating what it is that's coming at you so that you can decide in a much better and deeper, richer way. And clarify your perspectives, your point of view, your bias. Really get in and thinking about that. And there is something called thinking slow, thinking fast, and I'll put a reference to that. You may want to check that out. I found that book, those ideas to be of great value. And again, maybe another day I'll take a look at that, a couple of different thinking critically approaches, this notion of bias. That might make for another workshop another time. So the next thing is to savor learning. I like that phrase, savor the learning, because it's about you being enthusiastic and inspired to learn, to bring new ideas in, to understand it, the value, bring it in. And in crafting your legacy, that becomes such an important element of that. And so think about it from that perspective and be able to, in a sense, leverage that as you move forward. And curiosity, it's such a beautiful way of looking at dealing with the fear and desires and finding a balance of those kind of things that allow your curiosity to flow through. Okay, so that sort of covers off what it is that I wanted to share with you from the 13 action outcomes. But what I'm going to do is bring up on the screen some ways of weaving them together. And before I do that, let me ask the following. Of these 13 action outcomes, which one of them are blinking at you like an open sign at a diner? Here they are on the right. Which one is blinking at you like a neon sign in a diner? It's open, it's open, it's open. And add that to the comment section below. Identify it, add it, and why is it blinking like that for you? And then do you have one to add or one to alter or something to delete? Suggest that in the comment section below as well. So I'm going to leave you with that to sort of think about that for the moment, okay? Now, I'm going to leave this up on the screen. I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to leave it here for about 10 seconds. I want you to read it and then write a note, because these are how they're weaving together. And then down below, make a comment about enhanced clarity of vision and attention. What does this mean for me? Strengthen relational structures. Sustainable personal growth. How are these weaving together? Again, you can stop and come in and watch these and see what happens. Optimistic community impact. Enduring sense of fun, freedom, and fulfillment when you bring all of these together. So as we move towards close, I want to make a really important point here. I'm talking about a framework, these ideas of linear steps through, but I'm also offering these action outcomes to create your map, but use them together to be able to say, of these 13 and these 5 that weave together, how do those actions help me to frame up and create models and see where I go with it? So give it a go and see what's available to you. And as we move towards this close, what I wanted to do is just acknowledge the following. As you build out these frameworks, models, steps, maps, diagrams, and actions, always ask yourself, so what else, now what? Those are great questions as you are moving along, putting them in along the way, and certainly at major points, major summative points along the way. So I'm just gonna read these to you and offer a little bit. Focusing on intentional relational structures, adaptive thinking, and ethical decision-making fosters genuine progress towards a legacy that resonates with your core values, interests, in the words of those you serve, on your terms. So as you focus on these, improve focus and strengthen on these 13 plus 5, what it will do, it will really help you to develop a legacy that resonates, that has harmony with others. And those will be your recipients, your supporters, your contributors. They will come in and get involved with what it is that you're doing. And therefore, you can then start to figure out what words are they using so that you are connecting with them, but also doing it so that it's on your terms and you're not being taken advantage of. So something to think about. And through small, consistent actions like practicing mindful reflection or adapting new tools, techniques, technologies, you can continuously up-level, upgrade, upskill your legacy framework, models, and steps, ensuring they remain relevant, resilient, reliable, and reciprocal, and refreshing in service to your map reading and way finding. So taking some smaller steps, you could take each one of those 13 and go, what could I do this month? One a month? 13 months? You could say, well, what would happen if I did 3 of them a month? Well, you'd probably be doing about 4 months worth of interactions and recording in your journal. But the more that you develop these kind of actions from a map perspective over into your framework perspective, the better you will find yourself, because what you will do is, and for sure, all right, is that you will find a sense of simpler, deeper, better, wiser, kinder ways in which to craft, shape, share your lasting legacy. And from that point of view, that is a great contribution to you personally. But what it does, it's in that last line, it truly helps you to navigate your life, your map reading. Where is it that I would love to go to be able to do what it is that I would love to have happen for me? And what are the ways in which I can find that approach for myself? Navigating with that map reading and wayfinding, and then bringing your framework of what it is that you want to do. That is about living a legacy life. So, thank you for being with me on today's presentation. And through it, what I want to do is, my asks of you is to comment and subscribe and like. That would be great. Recommend this to others who you believe may benefit from it. And the other thing is, continue to watch some other videos. I will be making mention of that here as we close off. But the other thing is, I encourage you to take that second step of your journey of crafting that lasting legacy. The first step, I think, you can sometimes pull back. But once you take that second step, you're on that journey and allow it to take place. You can get your framework step by step by step. You can have your map to figure out where that step is going to be taken. Bringing those together, that's about discovering, shaping, and sharing that legacy life, that lasting legacy. If you do that and be able to comment below about what's happening for you, that would be great. That so helps me in what's possible. So let me just check, was there any questions that anyone has? And I don't see anything at the moment. I will answer questions if you're watching it later and you're taking a look at this, and be able to offer insights for you. So next week, I just want to acknowledge I'll be doing CAMS, Content Asset Management System Safety. What's that about? You can consider that more of a framework. And I'll be interacting with someone who asked me to go through it with them because A, they wanted to understand what I'm doing, but B, they have some of their own questions. And I said, I think CAMS would be an answer to that. And so we agreed to, we'll get together next Saturday, and that would be the 18th, and have some time together. And we invite you to join us, and you can ask questions as we go through as well. So I think that covers it off today. I appreciate you, and thank you very much, and take care.